The war was not just a catastrophe for the people of Iraq, 1 million of whom now lie dead, 2 million of whom are now refugees on the streets of Amman or Damascus, many of them literally begging with bowls. Another 2 million Iraqis living as refugees in their own country, having been ethnically cleansed in the sectarian hatred that has been deliberately and willfully generated by the occupier to divide and rule the people, as empires have done since empires began. It's not just a disaster for the dead. They're gone now. It's not just a disaster for the refugees, those that remain. But let me put those numbers in perspective. Iraq is a country of 23 million. 1 million dead. 2 million refugees outside, 2 million refugees inside. That's 5 million. 1 million already dead from the sanctions, which lasted for 15 years before the war. That's 6 million out of 23 million. That's a quarter of the population. That's the equivalent of 15 million dead British people. Can you imagine the mountain of misery that that represents? But it's not just a disaster for them. It's not just a disaster for the British and American servicemen and women who gave their life's blood, many of them their limbs, on a pack of lies in a war that didn't need to be fought and which was wholly fraudulent from start to finish. It's not just a disaster for them and their families. And now we've just passed this melancholy milestone of 4,000 American soldiers dead, and that's just officially. There are many more on top of that. Mercenaries, green card soldiers who are not yet American citizens and don't get counted as American dead. Imagine. They die in an American uniform, but they're from El Salvador, so they don't get counted in the statistics. It's a disaster for everybody. Our country has been put into the front ranks of the hated of the earth. I warn you, I've just been in the Arabian Gulf, in Bahrain, Abu Dhabi and Dubai over the last few days. These are pro-Western, very rich, moderate countries where the people are boiling with anger at what's occurring across the border in Iraq as a result of us. The Muslim world, from one end to the other, is seething with resentment at the double standards and the injustice of our policies towards them. I could go on all night about those double standards, but I just give you 3 quick examples. I mentioned Palestine. I mentioned the massacre of 140 Palestinians killed in 4 days, almost all of them civilians, non-combatants, 37 of them children. All that blood was shed by bombardment from air, sea and land from a military superpower called Israel. And nobody lifted a finger to stop it. In fact, nobody said a word against it. This is the double standard that's the unkindest cut of all for the Palestinians. The victims are called the terrorists and the terrorists are called the victims. And in all that death and destruction, the British government said not a single word. But 2 Fridays ago, in a military operation in Jerusalem, 8 Israeli students were killed, in my opinion, in a wholly unacceptable way. But within hours, the British Foreign Secretary himself was on the steps of the Foreign Office, expressing our national condolences and our grief at the loss of these 8 Israeli soldiers. Students, 8 Israelis, 140 Palestinians, 8 young Israelis, 37 Palestinian children. For the 8 we grieve and condole. For the 37 we're absolutely silent. What can you conclude from that? Only one thing: that the blood of some people is more valuable than the blood of others. That's the double standard. That's the injustice that's at the center of this crisis. I'll give you one more, because time is running out. Colonel Gaddafi, we were told for 30 years, was an international criminal, a madman, who was funding the IRA's campaign of bombing on the British mainland. We accused him of bringing down an American airliner over Lockerbie, killing hundreds of people. We said he was responsible for the shooting of an English policewoman in a London square, which we would never forget and never forgive. Colonel Gaddafi, we were told, was a son of a bitch. Now, Colonel Gaddafi's army is training at Sandhurst at your expense. Colonel Gaddafi's intelligence service, God help them, are being trained by the British intelligence service. We're doing arms deals with Colonel Gaddafi, signing protocols with Colonel Gaddafi. Did Gaddafi change? Or did he just change sides? Everybody knows the answer to that. Gaddafi today is the same as he was yesterday. The difference is he was a son of a bitch then, now he's our son of a bitch. That's the difference. That's the hypocrisy of these rulers. My last point is this. I started by exalting the multi-racial, multi-cultural character of this audience. If we're known as the anti-war party, we're also known as the anti-racism party. We want our country to look and feel like this. We want to be able to walk down St. Mark's Road and eat any one of a dozen national dishes. We want this kaleidoscope of many colours, creeds and cultures in our country. But we're not relying on the liberals of the Manchester Guardian to defend it. When the fascists and the racists come to attack the ethnic minority communities in our country, we'll not read out to them the New Statesman. We will defend them. We'll stand shoulder to shoulder with them. When they're threatened with deportation, we'll campaign for them. When they're homeless, we'll house them or find them somewhere to lay their heads. And if anyone harms the hair on the head or the beard of our Sikh friends here, our Afro-Caribbean friends here, our Muslim friends here, they'll find respect standing shoulder to shoulder with them. Because we believe in all these things and we're prepared to fight for them. Jerry started out by saying respect was a beautiful word. In Arabic, ihtiram. Shuman in Bengali.